even know if it I don't know if it added it to this version of free live streaming software that I'm using, that's going hopefully to I think it is Facebook and YouTube. The specific subject is a music project that I started with my two close friends in the early 2000s. I'm not going to put a specific date because I don't remember. All three of us were working on our own main projects musically, and I had some time and they had some time, so we got together. John Napier and Niall McGaughey were the other two people, and I was obviously the instigator, I suppose. I've been in a long friendship with both of them, shorter actually with Niall, but a lot longer with John. So I first approached John Napier and said that I would like to do a side project with him, and we'd been talking during our many meetings in various artistic and musical guises with our separate main projects. We parallel played, and we became very close friends, John and I loved him very much. He was a very beautiful man, and sadly we lost him in 2014. So already I'm meandering to the end rather than starting where we started. So in the early 2000s, I talked to John about doing a musical side project, and I said I wanted to call it T, Tonal Mental Experimental Assembly, and Sympathy. And he said, oh, that sounds good. And he was up for it. Okay, my sister just sent me some photographs. So the point being is, it was John was a very beautiful man, and a very creative human being. I mean, just incredibly creative, but he was also raw. Raw is a very weird word. He was so wide open that he got hurt many times by people that he'd worked with that were trying to manipulate his creativity into their own sphere. I didn't want to do that. That's why I wanted to do this side project with him. And we talked at length about it. And I said, well, the only way we can be truly open and honest with each other is set some parameters at the beginning for how we're going to do this. And he was a really good he was a very good positive thinker when focused on the creative aspect of a project. So I helped him, and he helped me. We focused on the start of the proceedings towards making something for Tea and Sympathy on short creative burst sessions. Now, I've been going through a lot with the artistic stuff that I was doing, and I used to set myself these 20-minute goals, which was I'd start a project, and then after 20 minutes I'd abandon it because I couldn't maintain my focus. I was in a very difficult transitional part of my life in the early 2000s. So was John, and it was all to do with our relationships to others, which is why, go back to why we set these parameters. So the first session with John, we didn't set a time limit, but we didn't set a hard time limits, but we did say that once we felt we were questioning what we were doing, that was probably going to be the end of that session, and we'd do something else. So the first one was on the side of in an apartment. First creative session was in an apartment on a hillside in Mount Washington, which is on the east side of Los Angeles, or a little bit east of the main part of downtown Los Angeles. It's a lovely area, Mount Washington. But he was in an apartment on a very steep hillside, and so I went there, and he had recording equipments already set up, because he was always experimenting. And in that first session, we managed to get the bare bones layout of, I think, 2 songs, and that was how we started Tea and Sympathy. And I think in the course of 4 or 5 meetings, we managed to get the basics down for 8 songs. And during that time, I said we need to, because we were listening to the mixes as we were recording and putting things down. My role, in specific terms within the startup of this, was helping lay the bare bones and then adding the lyrical content and the words. And John said to me, he said, they can't be old words. You can't come in with poetry or lyrics that you've written previously. These have to be done in the moment too. And that was a challenge for me. And I like challenges, especially artistic ones. But because I was going through so much turmoil in my personal life, a lot of that questioning comes through in the songs. Lyrically, I do believe now, looking back at those recording sessions and those creative flow moments, that I was very inhibited by my relationship to the people that were very close to me, but also my relationship with people in the world. And so there are elements of negativity that I've now hopefully got past, because I didn't really see as clearly as I do today that I'm thinking about it now, those sessions. He moved from Mount Washington to a shared house in the Burbank area. And I think on the second session or third session was when I started to open up lyrically and realize that most of what I was doing was a narrative to what I could see was happening in society and also within my own personal relationship. So there was this blend of negative commentary and also the hopes and wishes for it to be past. Well, fast forward to today, when I'm thinking of releasing these recordings, it's time. I mean, it's time to be past those negative aspects in my relationships. This is like confessional time, because I've been in so many relationships where I enable the people I'm in a relationship with to the point where I lose myself, because I've given everything to that relationship. So, and then that person becomes codependent on the amount that I've given. So I have to be very aware that the constant interchange in a relationship has to be symbiotic. There has to be this backwards and forwards, and sometimes you'll think, gosh, I'm giving so much to this relationship, and the other person isn't, and you'll feel this twinge of losing yourself. And it's at that point when you have to address the balance and try and keep that flow going as a creative flow. It's really tough to be creative 100% of the time. I mean, the reason being is because you may open yourself up. There's a picture on my other screen of a flower. You may open yourself up, and then within that opening, you know, there's good and bad coming in, and you have to be selective. So that was John and I's part of John and I's conversation early on in the recordings. I wanted this to be so brief, and yeah, I'm meandering all over the place. We met, we set parameters on the recording process. We realized that the creative flow was not a constant for either of us. We were both in very, very tumultuous, that's a good word, tumultuous relationships with other people and the world. So it was tough, but we set our parameters and we went ahead. So we recorded some beautiful music, and I tried really hard to be in the moment, writing lyric and recording vocals. And so a lot of it was very, very raw emotional stuff, and a lot of it was the commentary of that time for both of us. And we realized after the third session that we needed to have another musician come in and do some interpretive, creative parts. And that's when Niall got involved. And Niall McGaughey was going through his own personal relationships that were also tumultuous, as were many people in the early 2000s. And I don't want to get drifting. So Niall joined us, and I think, no, it's 2 sessions. One session, he came in, he listened, he jammed along on guitar and made some incredible noises, and just and you know, John captured pretty much everything, and you know, he and I were our intention was told to Niall that we're going to, you know, cut it up and place it within the framework. And then on the second session, Niall, you know, being familiar with what we were doing a little more, I mean, just incredible guitar noises. Now, I think it was after the 4th session that John and I felt we'd gone as far as we could, and he started mixing some of the songs and I started mixing some of the songs. I think we did 4 each. I can't even remember what songs it. Yes, well, I mean, now if I go back over the recordings, I know which ones I've worked on. I know which ones John worked on. It doesn't matter because eventually we put them all together. But we went off in our separate studios and started mixing how we wanted it to sound. And then it was around that time that John I think that was around that time that he decided he wanted to get out of Los Angeles completely. And I think he went to Hawaii for a short while. Well, I know he went to Hawaii for a short while, and I don't think that panned out. And then he ended up in Portland. No, not Portland. He went to a northern state. I think it might have been Portland, actually. And funnily enough, Niall had already left before we finished all the recordings, because his tumultuous relationship was at an end. So with the people he was working with, but he'd started his own business and moved to Portland or Portland area, I think. You know, so I was left in Los Angeles holding the baby, which was great because those 8 songs were like, oh my gosh, you know, these are really good and I want to really work on them. So I was starting work on all 8 songs because I had them all and was mixing them. But those 8 songs, before they both left, we had one rehearsal session to play them live. And that was when we realized that it wasn't going to work. We played one backroom show at a friend's club to see if it would work. And John was already flipping out about his other relationships. And I think he'd had enough at that time, and he was ready to go. He just didn't want to stay in anything that he was doing at that time, and wanted to change his life completely. So I think that he was in such a bad place that he couldn't even see that we could have taken it. Hello. We could have taken it further and played and put the album out. So it didn't get released, and then it went on to a back burner where I did some mixes to do it as an album. I even thought about putting it out, sent a demo version of some of the songs to a friend who actually wrote it up in a big magazine and said it was amazing, like, you know, making comparisons to lots of experimental electronic dub. And anyway, but regardless of that, I wanted to push ahead with the project. John was kind of done. Like, he felt he was, I felt like he felt, and I don't know, I'm not speaking for John, but I did have some very vivid dreams about him recently. And he said, go ahead, put it out, which is, you know, I have some very strange, vivid dreams where people come to me in my dreams. Yeah, I realized there was not much I could do to help John, and John was kind of done with the project. Nigel has moved on, so it was just me on the baby, and I was like, I don't know. So there I was with these 8 songs. Now, I went through a tremendously disturbing and disruptive breakup in a relationship I was in, and that relationship was already very aggravated. I mean, it was an aggravated relationship. I was in love with somebody who was in love with me, but we were just completely evolving at different speeds and at different times into, I mean, it was so hard, you know, and it was hurting me, and it was hurting others close to me, and I couldn't handle it, so I left. And the whole thing got abandoned. I mean, Tea and Sympathy became a back burner thing because I had to focus on my relationships that I was trying to help save, and also trying to work on a relationship with other music partners on my main project, Tunnel Mental, which was starting to sort of like really ramp up within me. You know, so I was writing and doing my main project, and nothing was saying, you know, keep this one going too at that time. Now, it's a very long time since. I love John very much, and I thought about releasing it in 2014, 2015, and then, you know, sadly John passed away, and I have my own absolute love for John, and I don't really want to embellish on it too much, but a lot of the people that he was in a bad relationship with, after he passed, used his creativity to enhance their current projects, which is, and I realized that was happening. I was like, oh, can't do anything with it now. And I kind of just shelved the whole idea, because I could see these people he was in a relationship with, there was a bad relationship, you know, saying beautiful things about John. And I felt like they were making more of themselves than John, even in his passing. And I was like, no, that's I mean, if I'm going to be lumped in with those people, I can't do it. I can't release this. So it's been a really weird 6 or 7 years since then. And during that process, I've realized and recognized that it was a very, very creative and brilliant project, and it should go out, and it's John's project, and it was so beautiful. And then to have him in my dreams recently, and then him saying, well, in typical John fashion, why didn't you put that out, you fucker? I mean, one of the reasons I really love John is he just never stopped being crazy. I mean, he had this way of putting this voice, this childlike voice, this little boy. I mean, he used to do voices, obviously. I mean, he was a great front man for a great band, and you know, I don't want this to, at the same time as I want to put Tea and Sympathy out, 8 songs, I don't want it to be just paying homage to what John was, because John still is. You know, I truly believe we are spiritual beings having a human experience. And the experience I had with John, our parallel playing and our work together, was purely creative. And he was a fantastically creative human being. So I don't want this to be, you know, at the altar of John. No, it was something we did together. It was so good, it was so creative that it deserves to be out to the public. It doesn't necessarily need our names on, but I just wanted to make sure that people understood that it was a creative and amazing experiment between 3 people who were interlocked into the creative process for the sake of the creative process, not for end product beauty. So when I put this album up, and I'll put this album up on Bandcamp, you know, I'm not going to put a price on it because it's priceless. I'm going to just put 0. People pay what they want. The reason I'm doing that is because I don't want to put a price on creativity. I believe it to be key to our human existence whilst we experience it on our spiritual journey. And I believe John is still part of that process too. I mean, I know that sounds like I'm talking to the dead. He never died. He knew he was eternal. I mean, in the same way as we all do, if we really focus. Anyway, I don't want to get too focused on that. I talked to Niall, and he said, yeah, go ahead. So he's working on music. So yeah, gosh, see, I knew I'd do this too long. I'm gonna have to do a different version of this that I can put out with a little press release before I release it or do anything else with it. I do want to work with some filmmakers to make some imagery to enhance the songs, but I think most of those images need to be from today-ish, about the nature of things, rather than reflect the negative connotations that come across in some of the lyrical content of the songs, because I don't want to look back on those transitional times in too negative a way. I want it to be a beautiful expression of creativity from that time to now. So it's like looking back at an old photograph and seeing the beauty in it, but also seeing the sadness in it, because it was a time of transition, and some sadly didn't make it and some did. So, you know, that's the way life is in general. I'm dealing with a lot of life and death situations with family and friends, so I know the grieving process. And I think because we recorded this in the early 2000s, it's now 2021, my grieving for John is complete, and this is closure for the grief, but also celebration of the knowledge that he's still here. That sounds freaky, but it's not. It's real, and it's real to me, and it's real because I feel it. And when I listen to these songs, as I'm putting the final mastering to them, it's real to me, and that's all that matters. You know, that reality is what we create. So John's here, and Niall's here, and I'm here, and we're saying, yeah, that was a good project. Let's show everybody. So there you go. That was the end of that, and it only took half an hour. It was supposed to be like 3 minutes. I didn't want to bore people, but you know, maybe I'll do a 3-minute version. But I am going to put this up on YouTube and various places, just so as people know that Tea and Sympathy was a great creative process and helped me transition into where we are today and where I am today, which is in a far greater place than I was then, because I'm embracing the whole idea of the creative flow. John opened that up in me as much as anybody did. I mean, lots of people did, but it's like not just people, it's beyond, and that's where we're going. So going up. Tea and Sympathy, 8 songs coming at you soon, and I love them, and they were my babies, and they're grown up a bit, but they're going out.